Hello and welcome to the World Happiness Festival. I'm Orla Sullivan, and it is my great delight to have this space to share with two world experts in education, in bringing mindfulness to children, mindfulness to classrooms and families in creative and fun ways. So it's my great pleasure to introduce Helen Maffini. She is the founder of MindBee Education. She's the creator of the Preschool Mindfulness Summit, and she's the co-host of the Global Mindfulness and Education Summit with Chris Willard. And Helen joins us from the United Arab Emirates today. A warm welcome, Helen.
Thanks so much for having me.
And Dr. Christopher Willard is a psychologist. He is an author. He serves on the faculty of Harvard Medical School. He is the father of two children. He's a former special educator, and he joins us from Cambridge, Massachusetts in North America. Welcome, Chris.
Hello, it's so good to all the three of us be together. This is such a treat.
Yeah.
Getting the band back together. So maybe I can start with how you both approach education. Like, you both have this approach that really focuses on our heart's well-being, our mind's well-being, and often education is very curriculum based. So often our hearts get left out until they're really crying out for help. So I'm wondering, since you've both just hosted this extraordinary Mindfulness and Education Summit, what are the things post-pandemic, or hopefully towards the latter years of the pandemic, that you see coming up on the ground that teachers are experiencing, or children, in terms of what classrooms and families need to help them thrive in the coming years? So maybe, Helen, can I come to you first to ask?
Sure. Thanks so much. So yeah, we saw, I think, a lot of hope and resilience that came through the people that we talked to, and this sense that we are kind of moving forward and moving out of this period with some new skills, I think, with more optimism maybe. And I think one of the messages that came through quite a bit with our speakers was this sense that, well-being really is something that should be the core part of our education system, or part of our daily lives in the classroom, and that it is so important for everyone involved, from the teachers to the children to the parents to all the staff, the bus drivers, and everyone that's working together to support children in their education journey.
Yeah, and Chris, this is something obviously you've been saying for some time, that the whole ecosystem of the child's education, if we can infuse that with an open, loving awareness, we learn more easily, we invent, we create, we problem solve, we pick ourselves up when our hearts are a bit depleted. So I wonder, can you share if you had noticed anything that's come up as a strand this year?
Yeah, I found myself so inspired by this year's summit. As we reach a different phase of this, I felt kind of more optimism. We've done this a few times during the pandemic. I felt more optimism and more hope. Whereas in the middle kind of times, or who knows when the middle really is, but it felt a little bit more down. But this felt so inspiring to me. And I think, as you said, like, how do we create an ecosystem, really an environment where, Thich Nhat Hanh, who we know just transitioned, that he talks about planting seeds of mindfulness. And I think, what's the soil, what's the rain, what's the what's the sunshine that allows those seeds to grow? And that is really, the larger communities, the adults in the school, the parents, the communities, the spiritual communities that help us grow these roots of mindfulness in our minds, in our hearts, in our relationships, relationships to others, relationships, to the planet, to so many things, these connections. So that's what I really saw emerging as a theme, and certainly a theme for myself going forward, as I think about how to share more mindful resilience going forward as we get into this new world, whatever it'll be.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I was struck by that too, that one of the things that the pandemic really spelled out was how interconnected we are. You know, we
Mm.
have the sense of of independence and, you know, once I'm taken care of. And it was very clear that literally your happiness was my happiness, your health was my health in a way that I think we've never really felt known so
Mhm.
starkly before. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this year, for the World Happiness Festival, our theme is on reconnecting. And I think it speaks to the hope and the optimism that you both mentioned that, you know, we have been in forced isolation or in very small little bubbles for some years. And now there's this moment of being able to be physically in the same space together, to be able to learn and grow together. So our theme is reconnecting with ourselves, with each other, and with the planet. So, can I ask you, what does that word bring up when you hear it? The sense of reconnection, maybe as a pathway towards well-being or wisdom. And maybe Chris, could I start with you?
Absolutely. I mean, I do feel like, you know, it's interesting you kind of mentioned the planet and Earth. I feel like one of the things that's been really special about the pandemic is that I think many of us did reconnect with the Earth in different ways. I remember at the beginning of the pandemic reading an article that said like Google searches went up for like, are birds louder this year? And of course the birds weren't louder. We humans were more silent, not driving and not having all our machines going. And we tuned in different ways. At least here in the States, you know, people were afraid to be inside. And as springtime came, certainly our family spent more and more time outside, exploring nature, walking, you know, whether it was just, you know, doing phone calls instead of meeting people in person as I just walked around my neighborhood, but just noticing like, oh, you know, the birds are different in the morning than the evening, and the light is different, and this street smells different today. I guess it was springtime, right? So like this flower must have just come into blossom, and kind of just mindfully tuning into nature. We spent so much time in nature preserves, and the parks were packed full of people. Like it was just so wonderful to see people reconnecting in a way. And it was actually interesting. We were trying to drag my kids out into nature recently, and do a nature walk. And my son was like, wasn't that like a pandemic thing? And I'm like, no, this is still like, we still want to connect with nature. Like that's what's inspired us. He was sort of like, okay, you know, he got there and he was totally like happy, you know, looking at the birds and poking at, you know, the mud with a stick and all that. But, you know, I think it did allow us to reconnect with nature. And hopefully it allowed us to reconnect with ourselves. I know for some people, right, they were able to connect more closely with family, with loved ones, right? Even if we were at a distance from others. And now we can start re-expanding those connections in those concentric circles that we've been in outward even further, expanding our bubbles and hopefully encompassing the whole world in a bubble of compassion and care. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I do hear when sometimes people say kind of quite quickly, like things will go back to normal. And especially, I think people in Ireland often, you might commute if you're based around Dublin. So you might be doing a 2 hour commute in and out. And they said, like, I don't want that normal anymore. Like, I don't know why I was doing that in the first place. I don't know why I missed every child's dinner time. I love dinner time with my kids now.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's given us this chance to kind of question, like, what is a meaningful life for us to live in, and how do we stay connected with those parts? Yeah. And Helen, if I say to you, reconnecting with yourself, with each other, with the planet, what comes up for you?
Yeah, at the moment, I think the word that comes up for me is healing. And I felt it was a really tough year, or 2 years, more than 2 years, right, for many people. And you know, people all over the world have had such different experiences. And I had a lot of personal deaths in my family and things like that and being separated from my family for many months. So for me, it seems like it feels like a time of healing, and that reconnection is about, you know, being able to finally see my loved ones in person and, you know, put my arms around them and give them that hug after so many months, and, you know, moving forward, hopefully being able to have more in-person experiences. While it was wonderful that we have all this great technology and we were able to keep in touch, we're very lucky and grateful grateful for that. But I think it really isn't quite the same as when you're face to face and you can have that physical touch and just have those special moments together and do things like Chris said, going out in nature or doing something that's meaningful to your family or to your class or your group of students, whoever you're in contact with.
Absolutely. And we are human animals. So like our nervous system responds so much to touch and being physically close together. So I'm conscious that teachers, so with Wake Up Schools, we've just finished a 3-day teachers retreat, international, which was inspiring and very touching to hear teachers share their exhaustion, their kind of close to burnout. And again, the sense of like, having hope restored or having even an aspiration. I think for some teachers, just the aspiration of what initially got them involved on this path just kind of gets a little maybe stale or numb and they can't connect with it quite as vibrantly. So I'm conscious there are often teachers who listen to people going, oh, there is a way to practice with children and go, well, that's all well and good for you. That's fine for you, but I have a curriculum and I have grades and lesson outcomes and inspectors. And, you know, is there anything we can offer to be a first step for teachers of what can help them in a practical way in the classroom on Monday?
Yeah, I would say, you know, just one thing that really helps me and has helped for many years is just to take these small pauses in your day. And, you know, the way that I do it is just to build them in while I'm doing other things. So if I walk through a door, I kind of take a pause, it takes 5 seconds and come back to the present and out of my to-do list. And or if I finish on the phone at the end, I also just take a moment and really I'm talking 10 seconds or 5 seconds and just taking a breath and realizing that you're here right now, I think is just a tiny thing that you can do on a daily basis, and those kind of build up and become a habit and becomes a way of being before you really realize it.
I sense that could really kind of aerate a busy day, that you have these just moments of releasing of pressure and kind of letting maybe a difficult class go so that you can be a little fresher. Yeah, that's beautiful, Helen. Thank you. And Chris, what on earth might a teacher do?
Yeah, I mean, this is so tough, and teachers have had, you know, like 2020 was a tough year, you know, then the next year was supposed to be a little bit more normal. And then what I've heard from educators around the world is that this has actually been the hardest year. And yet I do feel like with, as Helen was saying, these little micro moments of mindfulness, we can get such a return on our investment in terms of our own mental health and wellness, which we know is contagious. So it spreads to the kids, that calm, right? It really does start to ripple out to our colleagues, to our kids, to our students, to our to the parents and caregivers who we have to deal with, who are sending angry, frustrated emails. So taking that time for ourselves and then sharing that with the kids, and you know, whether it is like just, you know, before we, you know, when we've got that little moment before class begins, just a few mindful breaths, or, you know, all together in circle time, like that we participate in doing, you know, a couple waterfall breaths or hot chocolate breaths or whatever it might be, along with the kids, and these little resets that we can do for ourselves. And then bringing that also into staff meetings with our fellow educators. Like, can we start, you know, in a parallel way when we're sitting in those, like, who likes staff meetings? Nobody, right? But we have to sit through them, right? Can we start them with, you know, 3 breaths, or let's just notice 3 sounds around us, or feel our feet on the ground as we begin this staff or faculty meeting or something like that, so that it really does, you know, start to impact us and trickle out. And moments of gratitude too. Like, you know, it's so easy to talk about what's not working. We know what's not working, right? But taking even a little bit of time at the beginning of a staff meeting or as we drive home for the day was like, well, what did work today? You know, this kid showed up for school. They hadn't in a while. This kid, you know, finally figured out how to do their digraphs or map their sentences or whatever, like to think also, okay, and that it's not pretending that those awful things aren't happening and it's just stressful, but it's remembering that some things are working too. And it gives us actually better perspective and a more realistic perspective rather than jumping to the negative, which our brains tend to do, especially when we're under stress. So I think these little things do make a difference. As small and insignificant as they sound, they really do start to add up.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm conscious that because as teachers, always like we're taught to measure things as well. We have this tracking and measuring habit, and it can bring out this kind of fundamentalist perfectionist in us, where we even notice a difficulty even more than on an average day because it's being measured and we're watching it. And we fail to take in all the things that are not just good enough, but more than good enough, more than good enough. And I love what you both share about, this, when a teacher's presence is stable and open, that it is very contagious. And that, the kids do, they often don't do what we say, they just do what we do. So our presence is our greatest teaching in that way. And I'm recalling over the weekend, we did a workshop on practicing mindfulness with kids. And one of the big things that came out was that, often there's a frustration when you're deliberately like going, I'm going to teach you mindfulness, that you might want a child to feel calm or peaceful or happy, that we get kind of quite grippy with, this is what success means, this is a lesson outcome. And that, as Chris had mentioned, the conditions under which a seed can flourish, there's this, kind sunlight of mindfulness, gentle rain of kindness, really well-nourished soil, and that a seed might be really malnourished, really deep down, and like it might take that over and over and over to kind of plump up enough energy to be able to germinate. And so we practice with the sense of like, actually, if we keep our focus on the conditions under which a child could be happy and calm and peaceful, just generating the conditions, then actually when those seeds flourish is not really our business, so that we're not asking anything particular of the child.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think with teachers, and I did several sessions with frontline healthcare workers as well. Self-care can be, in a way, there's this training to give to every other biped on the planet before they take care of themselves. And that learning that self-care is not selfishness is a huge, I think, for a teacher, that actually by taking time for themselves, it's a gift, not just to themselves or to everyone in their family and friends, but to their pupils and their students. So you're both very busy people. You have multiple strands in your work lives. Yeah. So how do you take care of yourself? How do you avoid exhaustion, or maybe even worse than exhaustion, a sense of burnout? And maybe Helen, can I come to you first?
Sure. Yes, that's a great question. I think it's so easy to get wrapped up in what we're doing, and we want to help people, and we have things that we want to share and get out there, and especially when you get very excited about something that's working well for you. But I think the things that have really helped me are having kind of routines in the morning and the evening. So when I wake up in the morning and I do a short mindfulness practice, and then I play a lot of songs really loud, like good vibrations and happy and things like that, to set off my day while I have my coffee. And then at night, I know myself, if I don't get my 8 hours of sleep, I'm very grumpy and and things. And I look forward to kind of that time when I know that's it, and I have my little rituals. I journal and have a bath or a shower, and just wind down and get rid of all the technology and things. So those are a couple of things that are helpful. I also, when we were talking before about feeling grateful and gratitude, one of the things that I like to do is when I have to do something that I don't want to do, so and I'm feeling like, I tell myself, okay, I'm going to find something to be grateful for in that moment, so I have maybe go to the supermarket and I don't really want to go, and but I'll go in and think about how lucky I am, how grateful I am that I can have all this food so freely and so many choices, and about where the food came from and all the people that helped to bring it there, something like that. But yeah,
Beautiful.
I think those are a few of the things that I do each day.
That sounds like a lovely menu of self-care from dawn to dusk. And how about you, Chris? What are things that help you to stay nourished?
Yeah. I just, Orla, we were chatting beforehand, and I just love this quote from you, if I may, right? We take such good care of our phones, like when they get depleted. Like I was arguing about this with my wife, who never charges her phone, but she's pretty good at self-care. And I'm really good at charging my phone. I'm like, I think it's below 70%, I get anxious, right? But it's like, that's such a great metaphor. Like, what do I do? And how do I know when I'm depleting, right? When I'm getting below 70. But I do think, those gratitude practices, and one of the sweet things about the pandemic is I'm home for dinner every night, until the last maybe 2 months when I started going back to the office more. And like, I'm home for bedtime every night. And like, we do gratitude, we do roses and thorns as a family. Like, my son has been asking for meditations before bed when he's having a hard time. What's actually been really cool is sharing the meditations with I don't want to be like, oh, I'm the mindful dad, but like, this has been amazing. My son has not been interested in mindfulness, particularly, back and forth with it, right? And then he started asking for meditations at bedtime, and I've been sharing them. And then what started to happen, he and his sister share a room, and his sister was having a hard time getting to sleep. And he now like does these little guided visualizations with his sister, where he's like, imagine you're like on the playground and the sun is shining. And like, I just started noticing this a couple of months ago, and I was just like, and I just sit by the door and I listen. And it's like, it's amazing just watching it ripple out. And so taking that time at bedtime as a parent, right? And then also, of course, for me, like making sure I get out of my office and I look at what's beautiful outside around me, and I take some time to get physical exercise, where it's the middle of winter here, right? But trying to get out and, just see how beautiful the snow is and these other things like that, appreciating food as we eat it, right? I think this idea also of, food and having these conversations, like realizing how fragile the food chain is, right? With like, what's happening in different parts of the world with the food supply and workers and farmers, and, thinking like, oh, like these people working at the grocery stores and factories have been risking their lives to bring food to our table. And it makes us more appreciative and grateful, and opening up those conversations and thanking those people in my mind, right? And thanking them when I go to the grocery store, like deliberately saying, how's your day going, and meaning it. These kinds of things also, I think, make a difference. And of course, finding my mindfulness practice wherever I can find it, which is tough with all the things I do. And tapping into my creativity too, like letting myself write, even if I know it's a book that's never going to go anywhere, just having fun with it. Those kinds of things have been really important for me too.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. So Chris, you mentioned there allowing yourself to write. So maybe this question leads on from that. Often as teachers, there's a kind of a core thing that inspires us or kind of lights a flame where we really feel a sense of like meaning and zest maybe and determination to get out there and do something. So you're both extraordinarily enthusiastic, zestful people. And so what is it that lights that fire? Where do you draw that energy from?
I mean, for me, it's just like, I think mindfulness just opens me up to like, and being playful with being playful with people and with my kids. And when I can be open, like, the idea for Alpha Breath came from like, I was just reading a bunch of alphabet books to my kids. And then this other book about like making animal sounds. And I was like, oh, like what if we did, and think about my friend Daniel, who came up with all these amazing breaths. It's like, what if we made an alphabet book with breathing, or like just, like these other little, kinds of ideas, taking what's painful. My mother died during the pandemic, and, I know Helen's had losses too, but really thinking, how do I explain this to my kids? And that really became the basis of a book that is, coming out next year, but it's basically about how I understand reincarnation and how I understand, Thich Nhat Hanh's transition and other people kind of transitioning out of this kind of bodily realm. And, so allowing, when we open to things, I think they allow our creativity to begin to flow when we tune in a mindful way. And that's really helped my inspiration. And it may not always be there. Like, I'm sure it'll fade away at some point, but I also feel really grateful for all the inspiration I've had. And if it fades, I still feel great about what's happened for me. I've gotten to write some of these books, and that's cool, but hopefully it'll keep coming because I have so much fun with it. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I look forward to that book. 2023. And Helen, what is it that inspires you? What is it that you draw?
Yeah, I think, well, there's so many things, but one thing that really inspires me is, hearing from teachers that really, especially in these 2 years, that had to, learn a new technology, engage 3-year-olds online on Zoom, and yes, it was hard and it was difficult and it might not have always worked, but the intention was there, and people were so creative and they found ways to do it and they found ways to make it work. And when I hear, stories about kids and what they have been able to have happen online, or ways that they've made it work when they don't have computers in every house and different things, I think it's really inspiring to see, what people did and how they overcame all these challenges. And that just motivates me to find out more and to hopefully provide some resources and some different things that people can learn more about these skills and take them back to that situation that they're in.
Fabulous. What a generous heart, Helen. So thank you both so much. So let me share that you can stay in contact with Helen and check out the Mind Be preschool curriculum and training, and also her new upcoming book, Kind Kids, from Barefoot Books, will be released later this year. Congratulations. So if you search on Facebook for Mind Be Education, there's a variety there. And Chris, you can stay in contact with at drchristopherwillard.com. His alphabets too, even more of the alphabet, will be coming out later this year. And you can connect with him on Facebook and Instagram at Dr. Dr. Chris Willard. So we'll have those details shared. Thank you both so much. Very inspiring conversation.
Thank you, Orla. It was lovely to be here with Chris and you.